A professional counselor in the Dallas area is growing in popularity for his treatment methods.
How do you talk to kids about terror? And with social media and television, it's everywhere, and it's unavoidable for kids.
Rusty Lozano is the founder of the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy. He's also been nationally recognized for his work with brain mapping.
He's created a gym to work out the mind. His office features an obstacle course.
Rusty Lozano is a licensed professional counselor, helping children with headaches, with anxiety, ADHD, and more.
Here's where Lozano comes in. He teaches kids how to think their pain away with something called biofeedback.
A North Texas therapist is treating patients in this unconventional way.
We have Rusty Lozano who's joining us today. He's a licensed professional counselor.
He put together an unusual treatment for teenagers who are struggling with mental issues, except he's taking this now a step further.
Rusty Lozano, a leading therapist and pediatric biofeedback therapist based in Texas at the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy. And Rusty, thanks for being with us tonight.
Rusty Lozano, a father of 4 and also a professional counselor in Texas, says it's all about being a credible resource to your children.
The Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, your dedicated resource for mental health news, views, and tips you can use. Brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, Texas. And now, here's Rusty.
And good afternoon. Welcome to the Therapy Hour. I'm your host, Rusty Lozano. Welcome to the show. This show today is brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy and the Shelton School in Dallas. And today we have an awesome guest, really awesome. Amy is back. Amy Kelton was on the show last year, and she and I have known each other for a great while, and I'm going to give you a little intro to our topic today, but I can't wait to have her on the show. And also Chris Jordan from Austin Dudes and Beer podcast will be joining us. We'll be patching him in shortly. But today we discussed child development and redefining our expectations. Let me give you a statistic. So this is the last day of summer break. Tomorrow, I think everybody will be in school mode. And when we're talking about kids, thinking of parents going to the boohoo breakfast for kindergarten and getting their kids off to the school year for the first time, just kind of a scary transition. And then also seeing the flip side of that, where my brother here recently, he took my nephew, dropped him off at school. He's at OU. And now the end of the school transition and starting another journey for his son, who's going to be going to college. Congratulations, Alex, by the way. And so what happens in the time from kindergarten to the time that a child graduates and goes to college and now is on their own and doing things? Well, there's a lot of development and growth that child experiences and goes through. So do families. And it's not as intuitive as you may think. And sometimes we need some help and some ideas and some background support to help us understand what a child is capable of and how we can adjust our expectations of what they should be able to do and accomplish for any given level of education and grade and developmental period. Let me give you some statistics to support the idea of the child development and redefining our expectations topic. The National Center of Education Statistics approximates 50.4 million students will be returning back to school in 2017, tomorrow, or even, some had already started before. Of these, 35.4 million will be in pre-kindergarten, grades 5th through 8th, kindergarten through 8th grade, and 15 million will be in grades 9 through 12. An additional 5.3 million students are expected to attend private elementary and secondary schools. The fall of public school enrollment is expected to be slightly higher than 50.3 million enrolled in fall of 2017. So I'm going to introduce our guest. Joining us today, Amy Kelton from the Shelton School in Dallas.
Hey.
She is She is head of the upper elementary school, grades 3 to 5. She has an extensive background in early childhood through 5th grade education, and she travels extensively. In fact, she's going to be traveling to China here shortly. We're going to talk about that. She travels extensively, even locally and internationally, speaking at conferences and teacher seminars propagating techniques to use in education. She's been at the Shelton School for 23 years Welcome to the show, Amy.
Welcome. I feel like it's the poltergeist. I'm back.
You're back. But, that's a good thing, though. Every time you come in, I learn something. And you have a lot of great information to share.
Thank you.
And the things that you're doing, you're getting bigger and bigger. With your role at the school, you're now head of upper elementary, which is essentially principal. Right?
Yeah. They thought I was ready for the big leagues.
So
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, you're about to travel to
Shanghai, China.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what are you going to be doing there?
So we're training teachers that already have their Montessori certification. Montessori methodology is a method of education and a curriculum that's been around for well over 100 years. And so it's an international method. It lends itself beautifully to teaching children because it's a developmental approach to education. So I come today representing a lot of my knowledge with Montessori.
Can you explain to us what the Montessori theory is?
Absolutely. The Montessori theory is based on finding that perfect match between where a child is developmentally and the lesson in which you'd like to show. So it's very individualized because what we do know about human development is there's clustering of what we can expect at certain ages, but that clustering is not always neurotypical. You have children on a different pacing, whether it's accelerated or whether there's a reduction in it. So with Montessori designing itself to be a developmental model with a perfect match and then adding to it didactic materials, which I call it, put it in my hands if I don't understand. You got to get me physically involved in my education. It's a constructivist idea of education, which follows along those same theorists of Rousseau, Piaget, Bronfenbrenner, Lev Vygotsky. I mean, I can go through all of the
and just to kind of give some background on constructivism and constructivism in education, this is where you're also, a child is just as they're empowered to contribute to the learning process.
100%.
As compared to just being told and
Absolutely.
Given information and expected to remember and perform something with it, like either memorize it or show me how well you can use it. But now it's the idea is, okay, so this is, let's say that the making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I explained to the class, first you have two pieces of bread, and you have peanut butter on one side and jelly on the other, and you fuse the two, and here's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. What are some other ways that you think you might be able to do this? And so then you would actually access these ingenious ideas from other aspects. Like, okay, maybe one kiddo says, well, you dump the jelly in the peanut butter jar and you mix it all together into a mush, and then you roll it into this little, and is that okay?
Absolutely. So the idea of constructivism is experimenting, is to, in some ways, follow your passion, or what Montessori called your innate urges. That at different developmental levels, there are certain sensitive periods in which a child is going to have this urge to learn something and to be able to experiment and have the time and the repetitions to basically refine that aspect of what they're trying to gain knowledge of. Where that plays well in today's world is we live in a Google information society. I don't really need to teach you information. You can Google it. What I need to teach you is how to think, how to execute, how to experiment, how to be resilient whenever it doesn't work out the way that you intended.
Yes.
Things like that are those what I've been termed soft skills, and I don't like that term because it makes it sound like they're not as important. There could be the connotation with that. Oh, no. Those are actually those foundational principles that need to be in place for you to act on or see something through to the very end.
Absolutely. And I think that the asking your population, your children, to be just as contributing to the education process instills confidence, because you may explain something to a child and they may not actually understand it the way it was given to them, but if they turn it into an interpretation on their own.
Absolutely.
So it instills confidence because you're essentially not wrong, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a human principle. Whenever we master something, we feel good about it. When someone just tells us how to do it, all we're doing is replicating what they've said. But if we come to it on our own and have that time and that space to do so. So what I'm going to offer today, I hope, is looking at Montessori through the different planes of development, 0 to 6 years, 6 to 12 years, 12 to 18 years. There's actually a fourth plane called 18 to 24, but we're not going to get to that today. What are some of those developmental windows of opportunity, and then how can we seize those, both as parents and educators. Martha Denkla, who is Dr. Martha Denkla, who's the current director of Developmental Cognitive Neurology Clinic at the Kennedy Center, said something at International Dyslexia Association conference in 2014, and I got to attend her presentation, and I wrote this down, and it has stuck with me ever since. She said, we have a crisis in education, the premature delivery of curriculum. Giving information before a child is developmentally ready to understand that information.
That's powerful.
It really is. It really is. And it draws us back to my own undergrad. My undergrad is, I have a bachelor's of education, bachelor's of science in interdisciplinary studies with a specialization in early childhood special ed. What I was really studying was what to teach and how to teach it, not the developmental readiness for it and what child development was. It sounds fascinating that I went through an early childhood education model, but really didn't get a full grasp of child development. I've learned more about that being at the Shelton School because we're dealing with children whose developmental ranges vary, you know, from accelerated to a weakness in this area. And so we have to be very observant and analytical in structuring their education to kind of be that perfect match for them.
And adapt to what they need.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation on child development and redefining our expectations with Amy Kelton. We'll be right back.
Hi, Coach Gary, inviting you to listen to Sports Talk Sunday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. on 1190. Now, you can hear us clearly on the iHeart app and click on 1190 Dallas-Fort Worth Talk Radio. I'm joined by Warren Shore. He's also known as the Whiz Kid. You know, it's fun to get his opinion because he is a millennium. We also got Ben Martin. He's the glue to the show. He answers your phone calls at 214 or 817-787-1190. Make sure to join us every Sunday night, 6 to 7 on 1190, the station that knows talk.
I had like memory foams, I had feather pillows, and I'd always wake up with neck pain. After sleeping on my pillow, I didn't wake up with the headaches. I was more aligned.
I didn't realize the connection between the pillow and sleep. When I switched to my pillow, I got a better night's sleep, and I love it.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it holds that support all night long to take the pressure off your shoulders and keep your neck aligned so you get the best night's sleep of your life.
MyPillow is machine washable and dryable and comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and an amazing 10-year warranty. Plus, every MyPillow is made in the USA.
I personally guarantee that MyPillow will be the most comfortable pillow you'll ever own.
MyPillow is now offering 50% off their 4-pack special, plus free shipping. Go to MyPillow.com or call 800-480-1941 and use promo code iHeart. That's 50% off plus free shipping. Don't delay. Order now.
At 24 Hour Fitness, we have workouts to suit every side of you. Yoga for your inner guru, treadmills for your inner track star, dance classes for days you want the spotlight, and high-intensity circuits when you're fired up to get things done. And since our studio classes are included with membership, you can take whatever you want at no extra cost. So whether you're feeling fierce or simply finding your flow, make every side of you happy by joining the club today. Facilities, classes, and amenities vary. Not all clubs open 24 hours.
You're listening to the Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, Texas.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, we are discussing child development and redefining our expectations with Amy Kelton from the Shelton School. Let's jump in. So, Amy, 0 to 6.
0 to 6. Okay, so Montessori called this the creation of the person. It was the first plane of development, creation of the person. It is the most dramatic time in human development. Because if you think about even from 0 to 3, what that young child accomplishes, they go from completely helpless and immobile to gaining mobility, to pruning off sensory information, to being able to pay attention to what is the most salient feature of something, instead of everything coming into their senses at a high demand quality. They acquire language. They acquire the ability to not just motorically get around and be locomotor, but to physically learn how to take care of themselves, like grab a piece of food and eat it, to begin to use utensils. So this amazing growth from 0 to 3 is phenomenal. But 0 to 6 is when those ages are going to set you up for what's to come next, which is typically the starting of a formal school education. So in 0 to 6, whenever we're looking at it, we need to look at it as the central nervous system is having the opportunity to develop and regulate itself. From 0 to 3, everything is on sensory overload for that baby. And that's why you get that version of, I can't get the baby to be quiet, or why does he always cry at 5 o'clock in the evening? Well, it's sensory overload between the lights and the sounds and everything. And what the baby is having to do is what we were just describing on the brink is stimulus response. You know, how do I react to these things? How do I self-soothe? How do I, what things in my environment are pleasing to me, what not? So if you think about a baby, everything that they see and they can locomotor get to, it goes in their mouth. They're taking in everything around.
That's all sense. It's not that they're misbehaving or they're doing things they're not supposed to or breaking things. They're actually, their brain is learning.
Their brain is wired to be extremely hypersensitive. Because it needs that opportunity to learn. And then at 2.5 to 3 years old, a neurological shift happens. The brain begins to prune away sensory stimulus and begins to reorganize itself so that the child by 3 can learn to focus on salient features. What's the most important stimulus? So all of this overstimulation and the baby crying or the toddler throwing the fit in the grocery store is all kind of part of the process. Yeah. Now, to mitigate that, we definitely don't need to take a baby out whenever it's nap time.
Right.
You know, in some senses, we're setting that child up for failure. But part of this is the process. What's really fascinating to me is that just if you could know at 18 months of age, a child goes through a sensitive period for organization. Go back, parents, in your mind, if you have an older child or a 6-year-old now, and think about it 18 months. That baby would always open and close the drawers and open and close the dishwasher and take out the tray and put it back in. Mm-hmm. He or she is showing you signs that there's something about that repetitive nature of something. So what do we do to stimulate this all of a sudden sensory period for organization or order? Well, we do things like letting a child put their toys in their toy basket. They're physically able to have that locomotor to stand up, pick up one thing, put it there. But that mommy's little helper idea around 18 months, maximize it. Because what are you going to set yourself up for? Let's look at life from 30,000 feet. We started at 18 months old, striking while the iron's hot, and then we get a kid that we can scaffold with. And as their motor development grows and their understanding grows, the organization that they could participate in the home grows. So there's this wondrous age where they really are liking to know how do things work and how can I organize the world around me. Help them engage then in cleaning up their toys and taking out one thing at a time or having just limited amount of toys in a toy basket. Then you get at 2.5 to 3 years old, that neurological shift in which the brain is pruning out some of that oversensory stimulation they don't need, and being able to focus and have a little bit more sustained attention or sustained vigilance, then those are the times, not that if you didn't read to the child before, but reading to the child becomes even more important because they can sustain longer. So it travels from picture books, which what you were using to teach incidental language at that time, to maybe a little bit more elongated story. Some of the things that we also need to know is this is the time for the formation of character, the difference between right and wrong. It's black and white. So there is nothing that they can abstract or try to have forethought with, but that formation of character is this sensitive period between 3 and 6. What is right and what is wrong? That's going to then scaffold into the next plane of development when we talk about those gray areas. And then, of course, from 12 to 18, when everything kind of goes haywire because chemicals come into place of your amygdala swells to from the size of an almond to a peach pit, which is the emotional control center. Yeah. So this idea of formation of right and wrong and a moral compass really helps establish that character. The other things to do is make sure that we practice some of those techniques of scripting and manners. Always to remember to say thank you. If you're one of those that likes to teach yes, please, or no, thank you, or yes, ma'am, no, sir, these are the things to keep that script going and to always elicit and ask.
They're associated then with particular. Now, and it sounds like there's a system. It's like a system booting, right? It starts out very slow. The momentous gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it's not necessarily has to do with their size. Now, granted that in this stage of development, they grow very fast, very, very fast. But then there comes a point, and I'm sure we'll get to, that they seemingly look the same. They're not growing as much, but their brain continues to grow, and they're still making mistakes. But along the way, what I'm seeing is like an airplane kind of taking off from a runway, and as we're gaining more altitude, these kids are capable of doing more and more things. So when you find a toothbrush in your shoe, that would be evidence of the brain starting to kind of formulate these ideas.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. What we have to remember is preparation of the environment could be something that would be very beneficial. Preparation of the environment means whenever you look at, if you have a playroom established, less stimulus, more exactness. So I'm looking at a playroom that has, instead of toys, maybe tubs that are organized, a few bristle blocks in a clear tub so that you can see what's inside it. Children, when they can't see inside something, can't necessarily always imagine what's in there because it could be a variety of things. Yes, they've established object permanence, so they know something's inside there. But what are they going to do when they're seeking to find the toy that they're looking for? Take everything out and cause a mess, right? So how do we mitigate that? Oh, my gosh. Put everything in categories. This is a great time, that sensitive period for organization. Put things in categories. Like bristle blocks go in this clear tub.
Right.
Legos go in this clear tub. Stuffed animals go in this clear tub. So when it's time for cleanup, the categories are already established. Categories also scaffold language. Language is a series of categories. When we categorize language, then we become a little bit more fluent in our language abilities because everything that means something just like this is in this categorical box. So if you can think about it and go with me there, that categorizing toys and labeling toys as these are these blocks and these are my stuffed animals actually sets up a concrete experience too when we get into school at 6th grade to start categorizing language, or all these things are soft, or all these things are fluffy. Right. Also remember, though, whenever it comes to discipline at this age, everything is concrete. They cannot imagine how somebody else feels, and often as parents and teachers will say, well, how do you think that made that person feel?
Right.
And the common answer is sad or happy. They're just throwing out a line. They can't really, Piaget even determined, they are not in concrete operational until 7 to 12. So they're in what's called
abstract thinking at all.
So they're in what's called pre-operational, which is very black and white. So if you're wanting to teach something, like let's say they just hit somebody, which is very common at this age because language is developing, and our first reaction if we don't have the words handy is to go and grab or hit. Bring the child over that has been injured, I guess is what you could say, or has had the act upon them, and say, look at your friend. He is upset. Look at his face. His face is crying. His face is upset. When you XYZ.
So you're trying to build an association to
oh my gosh,
the event.
Absolutely.
Associations are really important. So let me think. Should you correct a child if they start using a car as a hammer? Should you correct a child if they're maybe using a hat for a cereal bowl?
Absolutely no. And here's what Montessori said. She has a great chapter in her book called The Montessori Method, which she wrote at the turn of the century. Okay, and I'm not talking about the turn of the 21st century. I'm talking about the turn of the 20th century.
Right.
So 1900s. She said, unless a rude or violent act, rude would mean throwing it at somebody.
Or breaking something. Hurting you.
This is part of the process.
So it's not something that you necessarily want to correct because there's some process going on there that, a car may have a different identity. It may actually be a hammer, maybe a spaceship, maybe a slice of pizza, maybe an ice cream bar. So you have no idea what's going on in the mind. So it really sounds like to be an observer and to maybe reinforce, oh, you did that, and reinforcing confidence in the things that they're doing so that they feel that exploration process can continue.
Absolutely. Part of the prepared environment, of course, is not having anything in that environment that could be of harm. So you wouldn't put anything in there that wouldn't naturally be appropriate for that experimentation. To give you Montessori's example, when she was observing her teachers that she had trained in her school in Rome, she noticed a child that was always getting teacher complaints, that he was basically a whirling dervish, just always in everybody's business instead of settled and normalized or working on his own work or engaged in basically some type of work that had focus or vigilance to it. So she comes in one day and she sees this child pick up a table and move it across the room. And when he moved it across the room, he carefully walked around everyone in the room as if not to hurt them. And the teacher was about to jump into the situation and say, basically, what are you doing? That's not a classroom lesson. And Montessori held her back and said, that was the first act of purpose. Intention. The child had an intention and a purpose. And look at what he did. He made sure not to harm anyone.
Yeah.
We forget things like that. So Montessori in that chapter on discipline, in the first 2 paragraphs, said the word observe or wrote the word observe 10 times.
Interesting.
It's really about providing the prepared environment for those experiences to mold and still formulate that character of right and wrong. Because physically so much is happening, cognitively, and most importantly, I think, is the development of the central nervous system, which sets us up for self-regulation required for tasks of vigilance. And you know this very well, Rusty.
Absolutely. and you know, and it's such a broad process. It's happening, and so many things happening at once. It's almost like you don't want to halt any of this. And if we can curtail the discipline mindset, don't scribble on the wall. Or pick them up when they're making noise with pans and put them in front of their toys, just to have the insight to be able to know and identify what's happening, so that we can actually allow that learning process to take place. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue our discussion on child development and redefining our expectations. We'll be right back.
If you're over 50, listen carefully. Do you have trouble remembering names, where you put your keys, or where you parked your car? Even simple facts that you should remember but just can't? By age 50, the average person has lost half of their short-term memory, and it only gets worse. Don't ignore the warning signs of age-related memory loss. Call now to receive a free 30-day supply of Cebria, the best-selling non-prescription memory formula supported by 20 years of memory research. A scientific study shows that Cebria can boost your memory within just 30 days. Just call 1-800-990-7765 to get started.
I saw myself go from forgetting people's names, forgetting phone numbers, forgetting you name it, I don't know, to having it all at my fingertips.
Get your free bottle of Cebria, 1-800-990-7765, or order online at freememoryoffer.com. 1 free month per household. Don't wait. Call 1-800-990-7765 or go to freememoryoffer.com.
Yeah, you know that dreaded feeling, realizing you need to start car shopping, which means dedicating your entire weekend to going from dealership to dealership. Thanks to D&M Auto Leasing, spending your weekend in a dealership is now a thing of the past, and it has been with D&M for about 25 years. Then you need to try D&M Auto Leasing, the only place you can experience the easy lease. With D&M's easy lease, you make no down payment, have no payments for 60 days. You can rest assured that you're getting the best deal. D&M will get you the lowest rates on a consumer lease. Experience D&M's easy lease today. Call D&M Leasing at any local area code 35 lease. That's 35 LEASE, or go to their website. It's dmautoleasing.com. And D&M is another proud supporter of the Russ Martin Show Listeners Foundation.
We make leasing easy at D&M.
If you experience aha in your hips or knees, take our hip and knee assessment and get back to experiencing Texas Health, the health system more people choose for joint health in North Texas. Visit yourjointhealth.com today.
You're listening to the Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, Texas.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. If you were just joining us, we left off discussing child development from 0 to 6, and now we're moving on to the next segment. But before we move on, Amy wanted to patch in something really quick.
Oh, yes. Because of my background as a therapist in teaching children with learning differences how to read, write, and spell, those magical R's, I want to make sure to say during the 0 to 6 stage, this is the refinement of the senses to prepare them for the academics to come. This is not the time to teach reading, writing, and spelling. This is the time to refine and make sure discrimination of visual and auditory stimulus is in place. So refinement of space, form, color, shape, size, quality, quantity, and then auditory discrimination of tone, pitch, prosody, individual human speech sounds. So in this article from The Atlantic that was published this year, it said, while American kids are learning to read, their Finnish peers are playing. And it talks about the difference in kindergarten now from where it was 10 years ago. And it says today, children in kindergarten are receiving 3.5 hours of daily literacy instruction. Kindergarten, wow. 5 and 6 years old. That will come. So, Plato has the best quote that I love to use because I think it's ubiquitous across all of the ages. He said, we can learn more from children in an hour of play than in an hour of conversation.
Interesting.
And I find that to be true. So going into our 6 to 12, which is the second plane, and then the third plane, 12 to 18 years. In 6 to 12, this is when we say the rubber meets the road, right? This is when school starts. Mm-hmm. And so it's the construction of the child's intelligence. The thing that we need to know is this is when they want to know the why and the how of everything works. They want to know.
Endless, but why? Why?
Everything comes together. Right. The curiosity is at its peak. They're in the concrete operational stage of development, according to Piaget, which means that they are very much in a logic-oriented world. So they haven't learned about abstract reasoning, but they definitely know that there's reality and there's fantasy at this time. Some of those things that we need to know is this is a child who can physically take care of themselves now, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you now, parents, listen to me. This is the time to start chores. If you didn't start some of those little things like picking up your playroom, which is taking care of your own self, this is the time for chores of taking care of the family unit and becoming a family member. And this is going to set you up for the 12 to 18-year plane where things kind of go a little bit awry. What critically needs to happen in this plane is chores equate to responsibility, which equates to this concomitant sense of I need to be giving something back. So we're out of egocentrism, which is 0 to 6, and we're entering more of a plane of what's called the dawning of the social being. They want to be more social with others, which is to work in groups and education, but they also need to learn how to give back to a community, how to set the table when it's not just about setting your plates,
right? How
to clean up after dinner and your chores to wash dishes because that helps the greater good, and your siblings is maybe doing sweeping up, how to change your bedding. And then put those things in the washer, how to start laundry. All of those things are part of taking the physical development that's already been in place and now giving back to the community as a whole. Because what's going to happen between 12 and 18 is we're going to go back to a little bit of egocentrism. We're very too much.
It's all about me.
It's all about me, and we're a little too self-aware. So we're going to get into that. But if you can establish and keep them, what I'm going to call the manuscript going, ensure that we say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, or whatever your family establishes as that. But also know the how and the why thing. So where does that extrapolate for education is we need to give more time back to them. A great article in Time Magazine from September of 2015 says we need to ditch traditional homework, make recess mandatory, and allow for more choice in students customizing their curriculum.
That's John Dewey. That's
absolutely.
That's excellent. That's an excellent format, and that is not a new concept. That is,
No,
it just keeps surfacing over and over again. We're talking about an idea that was originated around the 50s, right?
Absolutely. Well, actually, I'm going to go back to BC. Socrates said, "Don't use force in training children in the studies, but use play." In that way, you can better discern what each child is naturally directing towards. Where are your interests? So what I love is we have this movement in education that's slow, but it's coming back. Do you remember when we took away PE?
Yes.
Okay, not a good idea. Do you remember when we took away recess as a disciplinary technique?
Right. Yeah.
Not a good idea. So
I
what
need
we're
that.
seeing coming back is this ability to go out in nature and play. Give back recess, which is when we are more motorically in control, we are more intellectually prepared. We know the mind-body experience is very tight. The other thing about recess is the reason why they're misbehaving is because they're not getting enough movement in education, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these children, whenever they're getting those marks down for interrupting or fidgeting or whatever, you and I could not put, even with our well-established sensory nervous systems in place, could not put in the hours of sitting that is asked of children right now. They need to be up. They need to be mobile. Part of that idea of letting
They need
them...
a fidget spinner? No.
Don't get me started on those dang fidget spinners. They need physical motor, not spinning. They need to be up and constructing in their environment. They need to be investigating, taking that curious question they have and going with it. They will learn more through that process. And guess what? In this article in Time magazine, when they said bring back recess and ditch traditional homework, here was an interesting stat. It said that whenever this school went into discipline as dialogue and giving back some of the owners of control, they found that the difference between 2011, whenever discipline is dialogue and giving more movement into the classroom, from 2011 to 2013, the incidence of classroom disruption went down 103 issues being reported. 103 issues were reported when you increased physicality, when you talked about discipline as dialogue instead of just taking away recess. Instead, you talked about it.
Sure.
103 less discipline issues that year.
Wow. That's pretty substantial.
Basically, what it comes down to, Rusty, is the good old be-all of observe, watch what they need. They have human tendencies, and this is the tendency of the curious brain. Research is what they want to do. So we need to prepare that environment, have those environments set up. One of the other things that's going to do that, allow them to seek their passion, is lessen the homework. Homework does not move the needle. Statistically, it does not move the needle in academics. So when we lessen the homework, what are we going to open ourselves for? I'm going to employ parents to open themselves during the 6 to 12 to become more involved in family activities and or letting them go off into their passions. When I was a kid, my parents let me sign up. I remember one calendar year. I took tap, I took ballet, I took jazz, and I took gymnastics. And guess what I realized through all those things? First of all, I had to finish everything I started. Even though about 6 lessons in, I realized I was not going to be a ballerina. But what came out of that is I realized I'm not coordinated.
Yeah.
Which was fine for me.
Right.
Which was fine for me. I learned I'm not going to be a ballerina.
But at least you went and you explored it.
I got to experience.
So
the
going back to
trial and error.
something that you said about homework, 90+% of my population that I treat here at my center with biofeedback is a pain condition, stress-related disorders, headaches. And the one common element, the one common trigger that is reported among these kids and the parents, because we train both the child and the parent is the co-pilot. Why? Because the child is already so inundated and swarmed with work and stress that we're trying to teach them skills and techniques to calm themselves down and use anxiety management and frustration tolerance techniques. They're going to forget. And so then the parent is also being trained along with the child. So, but what's reported is that homework and school is a common trigger. There's an association to it. In fact, we're seeing kids that are actually dropping out of school and not in the way that you would think, but they're in so much pain that they can't go back. And so now they're they're either in the homeschool environment or they're doing some sort of a modified schoolwork and then trying to get them back into school. Well, that's the association with the biggest negative experience I've had. The homework is mounting, and they don't want to go back because there's essential. It all started with the amount of work that these kids are given to complete in a given time in a week.
Absolutely. So I'm going to encourage the listeners and viewers right now to look into the trailer of a movie called Race to Nowhere. And it talks about this epidemic. And there was a woman who was quoted in that said, I feel like 30 years from now, our children are going to sue us for robbing them of a childhood. So I don't want to say
that
Shelton's.
Powerful.
Oh, it was a
powerful
powerful
statement.
movie because it talked. Well, and it was a powerful movie because it talked about the incidence of suicide rising in the 15 to 18-year-old population, and it was about the stressors in life, including school. This demand to do what they considered successful was getting into XYZ colleges. Right?
So not only are they experiencing identity issues, peer pressure, and self-worth and self-esteem and self-concept, but now they have an additional issue.
Absolutely.
Which is the amount of work that they're given to do. So how do they have time to sort those things out?
Absolutely. So identity is going to come through trial and error, figuring out things you like, you don't like, things you're good at, you aren't good at. I don't want to say Shelton is the leader in this, but I do want to say that for both upper elementary, which is 3rd through 5th, and the middle school, we have decided this year to rewrite our whole entire homework policy. Although we know that there needs to be a study skill, that we've used homework as basically an attempt to organize and take something home and bring it back, create a study skill. We are saying we top off at 30 minutes of homework a night, and if it eclipses 30 minutes, write a note and say, we're done. We don't want it to be more than 30 minutes a night because they have to do what my mission for 3rd through 5th, our mantra is preserve childhood.
Wow.
Preserve childhood, get us back
I love
to
it,
childhood.
Amy. That is great. That's you guys are carrying the flag on the concept that I think is going to start getting more momentum. It'll grow bigger and bigger, have more momentum, so that we can get back to the basics of allowing these kids to grow and develop.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to patch in Chris Jordan, my friend from Austin, and we're going to continue this discussion with Amy Kelton on child development and redefining our expectations. We'll be right back after a few messages.
Hi, it's Fisher, the Radio Roots Sleuth, host of Extreme Genes Family History Radio. Every week right here, we bring you the latest on how to dig up your dead, plus amazing stories of discovery and expert guests. Maybe we can help you find who you're looking for.
Tune in to the Extreme Genes Radio Show hosted by Scott Fisher, Saturday evenings at 6 p.m. on Talk Radio 1190. If you're interested in finding out where you came from, listen to Extreme Genes Radio.
At Progressive, we think your floral boutique is the bee's knees. In fact, it's all the bee's knees in every hive of bees in all the trees from here to Belize. Please. Everyone agrees. You deserve the expertise of Progressive Business Insurance, with over 40 years of experience helping busy bees and their knees glide with ease like a gentle breeze. So whether you're a worker bee, a queen, or none of these, buzz over to progressivecommercial.com if you please. Faster than a bee's knees as he pollinates the leaves of 3 trees. Progressive Casualty Insurance and Affiliates.
iHeartRadio is the easy-to-use app for music and radio, which means you can take the iHeartRadio app wherever you go. But iHeartRadio is more than radio. Tell us an artist you love, and iHeartRadio creates a custom station just for you with their biggest hits. It's that easy. As you listen, thumb up or thumb down songs, and we personalize the stations to suit your taste. So, right there on your phone, in your pocket, it's iHeartRadio and your own custom stations based on your faves. All your favorite music, all your favorite stations, all free. Download the free iHeartRadio app now.
Have you been denied Social Security disability? Call the experts Reyes & Reyes Law Firm at 214-319-6800. Reyes & Reyes Law Firm, Social Security disability experts, 214-319-6800. Online at reyesandreyes.com.
You're listening to the Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, Texas.
Hello, we are back. Welcome to the show. We have Amy Kelton, Shelton School. She's the upper L head of Shelton School, and our topic is child development and redefining our expectations. And over the break, we were talking about electronics and how social media. There's another pitfall that kids can fall into with things like that, and pictures and a lot of peer pressure that occurs there as well. Let's hop back into our topic though. Where are we going with this segment, Miss Amy?
Okay, well, I definitely want Chris to be part of this segment, so I don't know if he's popped in yet.
Chris, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. Awesome. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing fantastic. How have you been doing, Rusty?
Awesome, thanks. I was telling Amy about you earlier today. We went to school together, and then your background as a teacher and a youth minister.
Yeah. And I mean, I definitely especially as a youth minister, got to, I guess, see children that came from both streams, or I guess all three streams, not just Montessori, but private school as well as public school. And as someone who went through public school his whole life and then went to private school for college, and then made the complete loop and went and became a substitute teacher in the public school system, things like that. The three forms of learning that there are, the visual, auditory, and tactile. The tactile is what the public school system is missing now. Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. What was that last word? The visual, the auditory?
And the tactile.
Kinesthetic.
There's tactile learning, there's hands-on, and there's so little of that being done in the public school system now. You look at it and...
Wait, so you can't use a fidget spinner?
Well, beyond
I'm
that,
kidding.
If you think... no, absolutely. I mean, the joke on Dudes and Beer is that, I had a fidget spinner. It was called the Ninja Star.
Mine was the Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, exactly. It was something that you went out and did something with.
Sure.
Was my fidget spinner. We went out and did things in the world. We were the first video game generation, most definitely. And there were studies that showed that helped with memory and, hand-eye coordination, but it's gone a little bit further than that now with video games. It's gotten to the point where there is physical video game addiction. It's gotten to a point where it affects social interaction, the way that people, heck, there was a case here in Austin all of 3 or 4 years ago where a kid literally went to jail for making a threat while playing an online game. And, just making a joke about like, oh, yeah, I'm going to come and shoot the school up, But, hey, he went to jail. And he was like 16 years old. And there comes this point of what does become socially acceptable and, how does that digital society affect the socially acceptable? But what I saw begin to lack...
Chris, real quick, I think that what happens is we're looking at this population of kids that they seem grown-up-esque. They look like an adult. They're as tall as... Now, kids come in larger sizes, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
They're taller than their parent. But then, are they capable of doing adult-type things? So when the mistakes that they made, do we come down on them as hard as as maybe you would think you would before making a mistake because you should know better? Or is there still this developmental element going on that they're still not quite, making the connection between consequences of choices?
I think we're coming at it from, all three of us, quite honestly, coming at it from a very unique perspective, probably not just as parents, but as educators, as, people who have lived this and done this. Not everybody has the basis of education of the development of a child that we have, so not everybody, I look at it like I went to a family reunion a few years ago and heard my cousin talking about how they were going to have to put their 7-year-old on Ritalin, or Adderall rather, for ADD. And I'm like, are you joking right now? Have you ever thought that maybe they're just being a 7-year-old? A 7-year-old's going to fidget in class. They're going to not pay attention. Heck, man, I'm 40 years old, and if I'm bored with what we're talking about, I'm sorry. Good luck keeping my attention. Who doesn't turn to their phone when the conversation gets boring nowadays?
Yeah, Chris, you bring up...
Hold on, Chris. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Let me what were you going to say?
So, Chris, you bring up a good point. You almost wonder if, and it's going to sound interesting coming from someone who works at Shelton with children with learning differences, and ADHD is considered a learning difference. And yes, we do have some children on medication, but it's because of the neurological need for it. But I'm on the same side as you are. I question whether or not our learning environments and our home environments are manufacturing what I'm going to call pseudo-ADD.
Yes.
That it's not really a neurobiological issue as much as it is an environmental issue.
Well, and it's one of those, hey, the kid scribbles on walls. Have you thought about giving them a dedicated scribble space?
You got it. You got it.
You are allowed to scribble here, because some of that is creativity. Some of that doodling everywhere is creativity. You know, and you really don't want to necessarily stifle that. You want to encourage it, but you really want to funnel it in the right way. You know, and that's where I found, especially for me, as someone who, like, you know, growing up in the 80s, we kind of had these diagnoses. We had people, like, they put me on Ritalin when I was in early elementary school because I was a distraction to myself and others. And then I was one of those people that it was the boomerang on, and it had the opposite effect. They took me off of it about 2 weeks later because they were like, the kid just can't stay awake in class now. But at that point, you also had teachers that didn't have their hands tied necessarily in the public school system with how they were allowed to teach. You know, you had teachers that saw that this kid needed more of a tactile learning style than a visual or auditory, and they could kind of, you know, gear things toward them. Things are so rigid and strict in the public school system now, especially with inclusion and things like that, and with the standardized testing, that it's literally out of control. And we've taken away the concept of industrial arts, you know, where a lot of this creativity can lead to life skills. And we're literally turning out unprepared adults. By the time they get out of high school at 17, 18 years old, where they should be ready to fledgling and leave the nest, studies are showing that 25 is the end of adolescence now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So time out for a second, Chris. So we have a lot of information here.
Yeah.
And we've gone from like 0 to now adolescence. But let me ask you, Amy, specifically, what can we do as parents, like in this situation? So now we have all of this information. We know that the brain is developing from 0 to 25 now. And so what do we do with this information? What are the steps that we take?
Okay, so some of my words of wisdom. First of all, parenting is so hard. It is not intuitive, just like you said. Teaching is hard, too. It's not intuitive either. We're learning experimentally as we go along. But what I would like to say is I didn't come by all of this naturally myself either. There are great resources out there. There are a series of books, one dedicated to each age child. They come out of the Gazelle Institute of Human Development. It doesn't get better than this. These are researched and vetted books. Each book pertains to an age, so you can get your 4-year-old, your 5-year-old, your 6-year-old, your 7-year-old, all the way up through adolescence. So let me tell you, I'm still reading about my child, and he's 15. The other thing, this is a journey. Whenever I painted the picture from 0 to 6, and I scaffold this hour with you, it started off in 0 to 6, right and wrong, but keep the manuscript. 6 to 12, start giving them chores so that they understand they're part of a community. Keep the manuscript, because what's going to happen between 12 and 18 is you are no longer the director of their life. You're the guide and the navigator, and you are not the captain, but you need to be the navigator during those rough seas. Because from 12 to 18, this critical stage is really development of their moral plane. Should I go with the morals that my parents taught me, or now my social set is very influential to me? And which one should I defer to? Well, if you've had chores in a family community, a very tight, you know, you need to be home by this because we got to mow the lawn tonight. You have these chores to do. It basically grounds them and gives them an anchor in these rough seas.
As a point of reference.
Absolutely, as a point of reference, because that's a really difficult time. And then last thing that I would say is always understand and expect certain behaviors. I would, every time my child turned a certain age, pick up one of these books and start reading so that I could understand and expect, but do not accept the behavior. So understand and expect, but do not accept. For example, my son who's 15, I can say to him, his name's not this, but he will die if I say his name on the air.
Right, John.
Joe, and he's not listening. And then on the third time he goes, what? Right? Like a teenager says. I understand and expect that to happen, but I don't accept it. So we have a phrase in my house called, reframe that, please. And he knows, what do I expect him to say? I'm sorry, what did you say? That's his line he needs to come out with. So I'm not going to say, don't you talk to me that way.
Or you have a consequence. That's it. Give me your phone.
I will never talk to you that way. I talk to you with respect.
Right.
Because, I'm sorry, the teenage brain just hears wah, 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 wah.
Yes.
I just say, reframe, please. reframe, and I
love
give
the
them
patience.
a second
I
opportunity.
love that opportunity because it's a mistake. And
second opportunity, because remember those manners
they
we
won't
taught
get it.
all
They won't
along?
get it right away. Yes.
All along we taught those manners. All of a sudden, because his mind was not thinking with his frontal lobe, it was thinking with his amygdala, and he popped out with it. Now those manners come back as my anchor and go, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, what did you say? And that's all he needs to do, or say, excuse me, what did you need? That's all he has to say, but I give him that opportunity. He gets that opportunity because I know what to expect.
Yes.
So those are kind of my things. Remember, learning is always constant, but time is our variable. Give them time. Time. We all process and are curious about information at different times. We need to allow for that time.
Absolutely. And I think that I'm going to post these books on the website so that you can go and look at them. You say that the series goes from
1 year old all the way. They then start clustering in from 10 to 14 and 14 to 18. My favorite is some of these titles.
Those are thick books.
It'll say their 2-year-old, terrible or tender, 6-year-old, loving and defiant, 5-year-old, sunny and serene, 7-year-old, life in a minor key. So it kind of gives you the theme of what's going on in all of these developmental things. It even says in here what the discipline should be like for them, what their education should be like, what cognitively are they ready for, what are their language skills, what are their social skills, and then how to plan a birthday party for each age. Because I'm sorry, if a 1-year-old is not going to understand that all those farm animals and the 20, 30 people showed up is for them. It's a little bit too much. So it tells you how to plan an appropriate birthday party. 8-year-olds, lively and outgoing. 9-year-old, mysterious. Cool. Excellent books. Because honestly, we don't know it all. It is not intuitive, but somebody else figured it out and wrote a book.
And that's community. We all have different things that we can contribute and share. So it's important to expand and ask others. If you're not sure, if you're not certain, look for resources for sure.
100%.
Amy, it's been a pleasure having you on the show again. And I'd really love for you to come back again.
Fun.
And ladies and gentlemen, so thank you so much for joining us on this hour, and good luck with your kids tomorrow, and hope everybody gets off to a great start.
Have a great year.
Take care. Bye-bye.